Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. How's everybody doing? My name is Derk Riechers. I might be a new face to a few people. Just started here at NETC and wanted to go over some new initiatives we have here at the online college. Sean and I have been working closely with each other really regarding our online programming and online offerings and what you, full-time and adjunct faculty, need to be aware of concerning distance education or online classes. Therefore, this will be part one to a whole host of videos that we're going to put out. I feel like we get so many emails sometimes, having a video message is kind of refreshing, kind of saves from all that reading we always have to do during the day and really portrays the message in the way it should be. This initiative is part of an online faculty training class where some more information will be given at a later date. But this video in particular deals with online classes and interaction. I want to kind of set up the story a little bit and talk to you about the importance of this subject. So this topic is regular and substantive or substantive interaction. And what does that mean as you, as a faculty member teaching here at the college? Let me give a little backstory, then I'll kind of get into the definition. I think a definition is always important. And then kind of get into some necessary steps that you need to take in your online classes for the spring and following semesters. Therefore, back in 2014, the DOE, Department of Education, wrote a Dear Colleague letter to all institutions across the United States regarding correspondence and distance education classes, or i.e. online classes. And the gist of that letter was that if you were offering financial aid at your college, your online classes need to have regular and substantive interaction in them. If not, they could be labeled correspondence courses, which is fine if your institution is not awarding aid to your students. However, that is not the case with most colleges in the United States. We all have a financial aid office that helps students obtain their education and earn that degree. So what does that mean for our online classes, and how do we go about meeting that regular and substantive or substantive interaction? So let me tell you a little backstory regarding those rules. One important point was interaction needs to occur at a regular fashion. Interaction needs to be started by the instructor, and interaction needs to be done in an academic nature. So based upon our review of some online classes and what a lot of colleges are doing is the interaction and the academic nature to that extent is not occurring in online classes. Let me give you a brief example. And I say you in the definition of just talking to you in the camera, not saying your particular online class is this way. But normally in an online class we have lecture notes, a quiz, a discussion, and maybe some extra material such as a YouTube video. And that occurs weeks 1 through 8 if it's an 8-week class. However, there is no interaction by that faculty member. The tests are being auto-graded. Discussion questions are not being replied from the faculty member to the student, and the students are matriculating from week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4 through that whole course. Well, then that will be labeled as a correspondence course, which in turn would be a violation based upon the DOE regulations about how an online class is supposed to be run. Well, you might tell yourself, well, I post general news announcements such as welcome to week 2 class, get started, or I might send out a weekly email, hey, we're in week 5, make sure you do your quiz, your Dropbox assignment where you turn in your paper and you do this discussion question. However, you as a faculty member, and I say you loosely, not saying that you were doing it, is not responding to that students individually. You're just letting technology work its wonders, which technology is awesome, but that's not meeting the requirements. So that's where we are at this stage in online education in the United States. Some people might say the Department of Education is picking on online education by these requirements. They're just wanting to make sure that the quality of online education is the same as on-site education. So let's get into part 2 of this video concerning what does meet the requirements of regular and substantive interaction in our online classes and what does not meet it, and how you need to reformat or maybe modify to a slight degree your course. And you'll see the information that I'm going to share is very straightforward and simple, and in turn is going to help students succeed in your class. So with that in mind, what is regular communication? What is not regular communication? What is substantive interaction? What is not substantive interaction? So let's go with what is not. I touched on that very briefly, but I want to go into a little bit more detail on that subject. What is not interaction? Okay. For this guidelines that the DOE set out, you cannot just post a news announcement or send an email to your class, and that will suffice as that regular and substantive interaction, because it is not directly to the student about their actual performance. It's just a kind of general announcement, okay? Regular communication. What is not regular communication? Kind of self-explanatory, but the technical jargon of the DOE set it up is kind of interesting. It is not just randomly going in there every so often and saying, John, you did a great job on your assignment. That does not suffice. You do that every week, and that doesn't suffice as substantive interaction. So maybe some of the stuff you're doing, you need to revisit and rethink about how you're operating your online class. How are you interacting directly with your students every week? And I'll tell you why this is so important. Because the DOE can come to any institution and say, we need to see your interaction directly with every one of your students on a regular basis, and we need that information because we're auditing courses regarding federal financial aid. Well, there we can run into a problem. And you might be thinking, well, that will never happen, we'll never get audited. Actually, it's happening every day. There's actually a college within our technical college system that recently got audited, and it caused quite the disruption in the learning environment at the college because certain steps weren't being followed. And that's really the tone and nature of this video, is to make sure that everybody has the know-how and knowledge to make sure we are following all the right regulations we need to follow. And in turn, these are simply best practices for teaching in the online environment. So, what is considered then regular and substantive or substantive interaction that I can apply in my own class, that I meet these requirements? I have some notes here because I want to make sure I touch upon all the important points, because it's really important we start looking at these and implementing these in the spring term. So that first one, it must be instructor-led. And I'll go, there's 3 points, and I want to go by each point and provide suggestions and know-hows so you can have all the tools necessary to be successful. So that first one, like I mentioned, it must be instructor-led. So therefore, it must be something that you're putting out there and the students are replying to, not something that the students are writing, like a question form, like a Q&A, if you will. One of the easiest ways to do this is in a discussion board. We all have discussion questions in our online class, and now this is the time, if you don't, to go ahead and put them in there, to say, you know, what was your muddiest point this week? What was something you didn't get a good comprehensive knowledge of? Or what did you think about this lesson or that lesson? And then you go in as the instructor and reply to that comment. That meets that requirement. You are directly interacting with the student. And again, it's a best practice to tell students why they're doing certain things or why they got a certain grade. Now, some subjects it might be a little bit more difficult. Let's say I'll pick on the accounting folks, for instance. They might say, how do I make a discussion question for accounting if we're doing formulas, or maybe for mathematics, or maybe for another application formula-based class? Well, every week you could do a discussion question, say maybe 5-10% of your grade, whatever you would like. What was your muddiest point this week? Students write their comments. It's instructor-led. You're posing that question. Students are responding to it. Then you respond back with whatever response to further that learning. So that really meets that requirement, and that's what really schools are doing for the instructor-led communication. The discussion board's a fabulous tool. The second part, the regular communication. Now here where it gets a little bit more interesting and fun, if you will. How do you define regular communication in your online class? And how do you provide a schedule for that regular communication? The best way to do it is very simple, and it needs to, of course, be stated in your syllabus. For instance, every week class, please make your discussion posts by Friday. I will respond to all of you by that following Monday at midnight. Well, you just met that requirement. It's an instructor-led item in academic nature, and it's occurring on a regular basis. If an auditor would come in, they would say, okay, instructor-led discussion question, check. And is there a set schedule for communication? Yes, in the syllabus it has that discussions will be posted on this date and the faculty member will respond on this date. So that's a very easy way to do it. Or better yet, if maybe discussion questions isn't your thing, if you will, based upon your pedagogy of teaching in an online class, write comments to students in their quizzes, in their exams, in their papers. Because if a student gets an 80 on a paper or a quiz or a short article review, they kind of want to know why they got an 80. Well, writing that comment, writing that feedback, again, meets that requirements. For instance, all submitted papers or article reviews will have instructor-based comments by that following XXX date, whatever fits your class. But overall is providing comments and direct interaction to students on a weekly basis. So we have interaction must be started by the instructor, must be regular, and must be substantive, can't be talking about the football game last week, has to be in the academic realm of the class. So where do we go from here for our spring semester? That's the whole nature of this video and why we want to make it, to provide you with all the tools to be successful. So what we need to do is really analyze your course, see if it's set up in a manner where every week you can either provide comments to a student's quiz, Dropbox, or paper, and respond back to students' discussion questions. Just please keep in mind that news announcements and emails are an awesome thing to do. It helps keep everybody on track, helps keep the class flowing in a great manner, but those two communication mediums don't meet the requirements of the Department of Ed because it's general in nature and not towards the academic performance of a student. And like I said, it's just best practice to write feedback to students based upon their work in the classroom. So again, this was just a short little video on regular and substantive interaction in the online classes. So I want to reach out to every one of you and kind of keep you abreast of the new regulations in our online offerings and what we need to do to have the best program in the state and to provide the best quality of education supporting our students. So with that in mind, I'm going to close off this video with just a very brief recap of 3 important items. You'll be getting a whole host of other videos from Sean and I about other topics concerning distance education and what we need to do to improve with our education. So again, before I leave you guys, in the online classes, to meet the requirements, you need to have regular and substantive interaction. So, discussion board, quizzes, Dropbox, paper reviews needs to directly have comments for students in your online class. In the written form, if you want to make some video notes, audio notes, it just needs to be in the LMS, because again, if they audit the college and audit your course, you're going to have to provide evidence that you provided that interaction on a weekly basis to students. And really, it doesn't take that long to write a few comments regarding students' performance in the course. It really helps them be successful in your class, knowing what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Sean and I. We're going to have our contact information below this video, within the corresponding email this video goes out. So please reach out. We're all a team here. We want to do well. That's why Sean and I are starting these video series to really support everyone's success in online education. Thank you so much for your time. Hope you have an awesome rest of your day.